back to Reynolds Runabouts, everybody. I'm Jeffrey Reynolds, and in this episode, I'm going to flip back again to my 1957 Wondercraft project. I'm waiting on paint during the holiday season for the 1960 Mystery Boat. Nothing I can do about it. I have a couple coats of paint of white and black still to put on it, and the paint hasn't arrived, even though it's well over 2 weeks. So, have some things I can continue to do on my Wondercraft, which, as you can see, it's back over on the bottom side down. I have completed the paint job on the black and went ahead and did a wet sand and polish on it with the TotalBoat, Total Buff, and Total Shine. I did not put the wax on yet because down on my splash rails, I still have paint to put on the last coat. It's hard to do a spray rail upside down and get it the way you want it, especially when that's the side that'll show. So I know that the bottom side looks great. Now I want to make sure that the top side is just as good. So I've got that upside down. Well, it's right side up, but now I will put some time in on getting that, just some fine grit sanding, and then I'll put on 2 coats of final black, and then I'll blend it in. Right where the splash rail meets the side of the boat is a great inside curve, so I'll tape that, and then I'll sand, and then when I put the paint down and polish, it'll blend in quite easily. So I'm really happy with that. So what we're going to do on this boat, I'm going to give you a little tour. So the next step down the Wondercraft is to paint the bilge. I've got 1 or 2 coats, I'm not even sure anymore. I put it on years ago. So the bilge gets white paint. It's a bilge paint made by TotalBoat called TotalBilge. And in addition to the inside of the boat or the bilge being done, I'm going to do the floor panels for the passengers, the shifter control for the Mercury shifter is registered at the keel, and then it comes up through the floor, so it's just a shifter showing. And then I have the floor panels for fuel tanks and the battery tank or battery that go back here. And then I'll go ahead and fasten those down, and then I can move on to doing the deck. So let's get to work. So the bilge paint in the bilge of the boat is now done. I use TotalBoat TotalBilge, which is tough, sticky, and smelly. So if you can get through those 3 problems, 2 of which are bad, then the best one is tough. I really love having this in the boat. It's going to be a covered bilge. There'll be floor panels here, got a few touch-ups there. But it's really, it's like almost an epoxy that dries with air. So that's kind of what I went after, and it's really tough. And this is where all the oil and water and all the things that you're trying to keep contained somehow, sometime will get into the boat. You notice that the side upholstery is lifted. The boat was originally built with that looking like that, and that's because the upholstery won't stick to the paint. So you leave it to stick to the raw fiberglass, which is what I'll do as well. And so yeah, that's all done. Second coat, real happy with that. It was a white bilge when I found it, and I replicated that. And then over to the parts. This is the shifter mount, I'll call it. That's where my Mercury, 1960 Mercury shifter will go on. I'm putting it into the front cockpit on the floor versus it was on the side originally, and I've moved it. I wanted a center cockpit shift. It was originally attached to the side of the boat, which I didn't really, that was really not a good idea. Never could figure out why they just didn't mold a shifter mount into the side of the boat like other builders, but they didn't do that. So, and I did want to do a shifter in the middle, so that worked out. The other parts are for the seat, front and back. The bench seats sit on those. They attach to the stringers, and then the seats pop down on the pegs. And that I made, for the most part, the design was there. I made the peg invention to make sure that the seats stayed secure with passengers. And then, of course, the front seats attach right to the boat, and the rear seat flips forward so you can access the gas tank. So that's a couple of modifications I made. And then we have the kick plate or foot plate that your feet rest against, and then you have an opening that allows you to throw some stuff into the bill or the front under the bow. And then second coat on the 2 rear panels for the floor that the fuel tanks and batteries sit on. And the cutouts are for so you can access the drain and the bilge pump. You always know what's going on in the rear of the boat. And I've got 3 more that I have to do tomorrow. The room only leaves me enough for this, so I will be back tomorrow. Here is the final set of floor panels with the TotalBoat TotalBilge paint on them. I used a 3/8 inch nap roller to do that. It's the only thing that gets enough paint and down into the cracks and grain, and also really fills it well, as you can see. So here's one of there's 2 pieces in the second cockpit. It's the only way to get the thing out. So I end up making 2 pieces. Never knew what was in the boat. I found the 2 pieces in the rear where the gas tanks and batteries sat, but that was all that was left in the bilge. So got creative with that. The whole idea is to make it accessible, so I can always pull those out and check the bilge. Always pull the floorboards in the fall to let it air out all winter. Access the shifter cable that'll be running down through the bilge. All good. And then this is the big piece that goes in the front. This one fits really well. Just a 1-piecer, and then here's the hole for the shifter mechanism to come up through out of the stringer. And yeah, so the reason I did that, both top and bottom surfaces have 2 coats of the bilge paint. They also were sealed with Smith's penetrating epoxy sealer. I used marine plywood, about the best I can do. This probably will have kind of a textured rubber flooring that you can peel up and down as well to get for wetness and dryness. So it'll make it a lot safer because this will be a slippery surface, and I don't want that for the crew on the boat. So I'll put that on, and then at boat shows I'll pull it up because that would not be original to the boat. even though this boat is classified as a resto mod at this point from the Antique Classic Boat Society, ACBS, I will try to, make it look as cool, original as I can by pulling up those rubber mats when I'm not using it. So I'm gonna let these dry overnight, and then I'm gonna put them in the boat. Here is the interior all assembled. This is the front cockpit, and you can see the Mercury shifter mount that I created for a center shift option. And then there's the footrest back there. I have to attach that in the boat, so it's just sitting in place right now. There's a couple little supports that are in the back. Here's the rear floor. As you can see, this is a two-piecer that allows me access to the bilge. It also allows me access to pull the seat supports for both sides. Front and center cockpit allows me to get those out of the way. The floor will come out regardless. They drop in independently. It's just easier to take the floor or the seat supports out first. And then two-piece part in the back, which allows me, again, take them out easily. I did try full sheet flooring. There's just no way with the curve of the boat to do that. So that is it for the installation of the interior flooring anyways, and the bilge painting. Really love the cleanness. My vinyl needs a little cleaning, but just from dust and such. But other than that, the boat is ready now for its second stage, and that is going to be the staining. I have to put in this is going to get a removable engine well. It allows me to access the bilge here by taking it out with magnets. I have magnets that allow these panels, there's three total, two on the sides, one on the bottom, which will allow me to access the bilge. And if you've ever worked on an outboard boat, it allows you access to the running gear and the pulleys. Before, that would have been impossible. And I have worked on boats where that is you under the little deck trying to do that, and it's not pleasant. So looking forward to the next step, and I'm assuming you are as well, that we're going to have varnish on this deck in the next episode. So call this one done. I should also explain that the floor panels and the parts for the seat and for the shifter, I previously, when I worked on the stringers in the flooring, I put in tubes. I think they'll call them T-nuts. And so I have a aluminum tube that goes down into the stringers that have been epoxied in, and they're a little bit proud. So when you put the floor down, it registers them not only in the hole in the flooring, but then I have a stainless steel bolt that goes into each of those tubes, and that is what fastens the flooring and the supports to the keel of the boat. I did that because in a previous restoration years ago on a 1957 skipper craft, they kept sending the screws into the stringers, so every time you pulled the floor, you're just boring out that hole in your stringer, allowing access for water. So my solution going forward was never to do that, but to put the tubes in, epoxy them in, so that when there's any water, even if it got into the tube is a tube and it will not go into the wood. So there might be water in the tube, but there won't be any water in the stringer. So doing that made a lot more sense than seeing what I had seen in some of these other boats. And I will do that going forward. Even with the boat behind me, the 1960 mystery boat, I'll do that as part of a precautionary measure into the preservation of the boat. And it's not something that would be judged harshly or even negatively by Antique-Classic Boat Society and its boat judging, because it's preserving the boat, but also it's nothing crazy, excessive, and visual. You can't see it. So I'll be doing that as well. So the next step, like I said, is to put varnish on the deck. This boat will get varnish in the middle portions of the deck and the dashboard. The rest of it gets a white, large white stripe all the way around the perimeter on the sheer and down the middle, which is carried through on the rear hatch. So it's going to have a mahogany, and then white lines in the mahogany to simulate planking. It'll be something I do by put the varnish on, and then I put on a high performance epoxy that's clear by TotalBoat, and then that I sand that down, and that flattens the surface so I can put my white lines on with 3M fine line tape. And Interfanes makes a white paint just for deck and boot stripes. Put that on, and then I pull the tape, let that dry, and then I put 2 more coats of this high performance epoxy on, and it essentially seals the wood varnish, or wood stain and white lines into the surface of the epoxy, sand that smooth, and then I go ahead and I put a couple clear coats of what I'm going to use is Interfane, Epiphanes or Epiphanes, depends on where you're at in the world. That gives you the varnish protection, and if ever the varnish starts to go, I always have that epoxy as a second, as a suspenders and belts approach. It's safe. Water won't get into it, and then I can always take that down and do with sanding, and I'll always have a safety surface under that I can just add more varnish to. So it'll be a really tough boat. I did that on that 1955 Wagemaker I did 2 years ago. That was how they had done it originally. I found it that way, thought that was fascinating. Did some video learning from Dan Lee in England, who uses that approach on his new boat construction with plywood decks, and loved how it came out. So I will be doing that on my boat. I won't be doing that on the mystery boat. That's something the owner would like to do at a traditional pettit varnish approach. That's fine, you can do that. But this is how I will do my boat. So until then, thank you for tuning in. And if you're not a subscriber, please do so. It'll get you that notification when I have videos come out, which are usually Wednesday mornings every 2 weeks, the first and second Wednesday of the month, unless something comes up. I have travel plans at the end of this month that might alter that. I'm going to try to avoid that, but you're not sure, right? And then if you're liking the videos, please hit the like button and drop a comment below, which is always nice to see your questions and positive feedback, which is always nice to receive. Try to keep it positive. If you have any critical questions, great, it's always good to know maybe if I missed something or something you'd like to see done or wouldn't do it that way. It's always interesting to hear different opinions. So until then, I will see you soon.